Alrighty, greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to our Thursday night live stream for Week 18 of the 2024 fantasy football season, where we'll be talking all things fantasy football related in regards to Week 18. Now, as you guys can see on screen, we have our top 17 quarterback rankings going into this given week. Again, rankings are always subject to change between now and Saturday and, of course, Sunday's games. These rankings can certainly change based on whether or not we know some of these players are going to be active or inactive going into the weekend. Based on what we have learned over the course of this week, based on what the coaches have said, based on which specific players have come out and said to the media and the public, we have a pretty good indication as to these players rolling this upcoming weekend. So if you guys have to go ahead and start some quarterbacks, hopefully you have the services of Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, maybe another one of these A-tier quarterbacks who have been dominating lately. Guys like Joe Burrow, Jared Goff going on, consecutive streaks of 3+ passing touchdowns. Obviously, Garrett carrying many of our fantasy teams. But again, if you guys have any questions, make sure you include it in the live chat. I'm just going to be here to help for the next, 30 to an hour. If you guys want to go ahead and ask questions, make sure you include your scoring format, whether it be a half PPR, full PPR, standard scoring format, whatever it is. I'm here to help in regards to Week 18. Obviously, we're getting more and more information regarding injuries and, of course, player indications as to whether or not they're going to be active going into this weekend. Again, there are a lot of players that are either playing for contract incentives and or to try to find themselves in a better playoff position. As for teams that aren't really fighting for much, for example, someone like Kyler Murray, even though technically he is not fighting for a playoff position, he needs 50 rushing yards and a rushing. If he was to score 50 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown this weekend against the San Francisco 49ers, I think he's implicated for another 150 to 300K of incentives monetarily. So again, there's still a lot that players are playing for going into this weekend. Either way, welcome. Hope you guys are doing well on this wonderful new year. Let's go ahead and let's begin. Dylan in the chat was saying, before I even got here, he said, BTJ not making the Pro Bowl makes me want to cry. Here's the thing. The Pro Bowl doesn't really matter. The Pro Bowl is a popularity contest ultimately, right? It's not really chosen by the players or by the coaches. It's not really it really has just become a popularity contest. Same thing with the NBA All-Star game kind of sort of. So ultimately, the All-Pro is the most important thing. If you make the All-Pro, great. If you make a Pro Bowl, lately it doesn't really mean much. I mean, again, it's really just a matter of who wants to participate at the end of the day. I'm sure there are going to be players that kind of opt out of playing in the Pro Bowl, so it'll potentially give an opportunity for BTJ to go in there. But yeah, I mean, the Pro Bowl really hasn't been of value as of late the last couple seasons. It's all about the All-Pro standings. Cooper says, season's over. Just here for the vibes. Thank you, Cooper. I appreciate that. Owner says, late day in the office. Just wanted to, just in time for Andrew's live stream. That's right, Owner. Thank you. Seeker says, Jalen McMillan or Jalen Warren this weekend, full PPR. I'd rather play McMillan. Yeah, look, I think Warren is certainly going to be a solid in a full PPR 10-point player this given week. If he scores a touchdown, obviously he has even more potential for upside. But ultimately, when we're talking about McMillan, the receiving upside that he has on top of the touchdown utilization that he's had lately, I mean, the guy has scored a touchdown for 4 consecutive weeks, 2 touchdowns or more in 2 of the last 3 games. Baker Mayfield, the thumbnail of today's episode, is on a heater. I think he's got 39 passing touchdowns. You want to talk about Pro Bowl snubs? That's a guy that potentially should have been in the mix. But either way, obviously a lot of quarterbacks to compete with within the NFC. Either way, yeah, play McMillan there. Angel Montero says, what's up? How's it going, man? Says, y'all ever played Retro Bowl? I've never heard of it. I'm going to be honest. Gabriel says, I lost the semifinals because of Kendre Miller. I needed it 2 weeks ago, but even a live video or none, bro. What does that mean? I needed you 2 weeks ago. Or even a live video. What do you mean? I was here 2 weeks ago, brother. I don't know what you're talking about. No rankings or nothing. What? I don't know what you're talking about, bro. I've been here every day for the last 4 months. All right, let's see. Your Angel Montero says, I don't know what he's talking about. It doesn't matter. Jennings Wilson. Okay, Jennings or Wilson. If we're talking about Garrett Wilson or Juwan Jennings this weekend, I'd probably lean in the direction of Juwan Jennings there. Again, like we talked about yesterday, Romeo Dobbs, former college teammates with Juwan Jennings. There's a lot of connection already there. The expectation is Purdy's going to be out there there should be a lot of opportunity going in that direction over the course of this week. Thus far, Deebo Samuel has yet to practice. Also, George Kittle has popped up on the injury report with a hamstring injury. That has been something that has plagued him all season. Expect for Juwan Jennings to get himself a lot of utilization. I know that also Ricky Pearsall popped up on the injury report. So there's a lot of opportunity for potentially Juwan Jennings to have himself a big week here. Let's see here. Justin McMillan says, in a half PPR, DeAndre Swift, Garendo, Dowdle, Tracy. Okay, so Guerrero risky question mark? I don't think he's a risk. Again, he's at a full participation in practice. There's no question that he's going to be the clear and away number one running back of the offense. As for the alternative options that you have, I would prefer to play either Dowdle or Tracy over him. Specifically in a half PPR, I would lean in the direction of playing Dowdle there. Even in a game last week in which they were down 40 points at the end of it, Dowdle still had himself over 100 rushing yards. The opportunity this week taking on the Washington Commanders, again, it could be a little bit of a sketchier situation considering that we're not 100% certain as to whether or not Cooper Rush is going to play the entirety of the game. They did make a couple comments earlier today from the coaching staff. Mike McCarthy saying that maybe they're going to give a couple looks to Trey Lance. If there's a possibility of that, that could jeopardize the upside of someone like Rico Dowdle in comparison to a Tracy or Guerrero, because the stability of quarterback within a given week could certainly make a huge difference. But for as it currently stands, I'd go Guerrero. I'd go with Dowdle as the number one of that group. I could convince myself to go probably, if it was a full PPR, I'd probably go with Tracy. But considering it's a half, it's either Dowdle or Guerrero there in my mind. Thank you. Let's see. Adventures here. Brown from Cincinnati playing. That is a game time decision. So earlier today, we got an indication based on the reports that said it is going to be a game time decision. So on Saturday afternoon, prior to the game between Cincinnati taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm going to be live here on the channel. If in fact he is not active, then we can pivot to picking up Khalil Herbert and starting him. Again, if you have Chase Brown on roster as of right now, it's probably in your best interest to drop somebody off of your bench, pick up Khalil Herbert. So in the event in which he is out, if you don't have any alternative running backs to pivot to, Khalil Herbert could be a really good option within the upcoming matchup, considering what we have seen over the course of this season thus far. From the backfield of the Cincinnati Bengals, they specifically want to just give one running back the ball. They don't want to split it with a two-headed monster. So if Khalil Herbert would be the only guy there, he would be in line for the entire workload of opportunity, which could be 15 plus touches and goal line opportunities. All right, let's see here. Boswell or Reichard for kicking this weekend? I'd probably lean towards Reichard. Indoor game. I don't really have to worry about any weather implications. Additionally, on top of that, I think that purely the game between the Minnesota Vikings and Detroit Lions, I mean, based on the Vegas totals and the expectation of both those teams continuing to score a high volume of points, it should be the highest scoring game of the week. Reichard, I think, has the advantage over Boswell in this upcoming matchup. All right, let's scroll down here. Angel says, just a shout out to the super team I've built this year. Best team I've ever assembled. This says Allen, Achane, Brown, JT Charbonnet, Brian Robinson Jr. We have Evans, St. Brown, Wilson, Debo, Kittle. Yeah, I would assume that you're probably never going to be able to build a team like that ever again, brother. That is a ridiculous roster, to say the least. Bears fan says, why are we so high on Bryce? Bryce Young has been incredible. I mean, honestly, for fantasy purposes, the last couple weeks here, he's been solid. He's had 2+ touchdowns in he's had 2+ touchdowns in 4 of the last 5 games. And on top of it, takes on the Atlanta Falcons, who are the best matchup at the quarterback position and the second best matchup at the wide receiver position. So without Chuba Hubbard involved in the offense, we should anticipate a lot more potential passing upside for the likes of Bryce Young, which kind of just elevates him into that overall conversation. On top of it, earlier this week, at the beginning of the week, the head coach of the Carolina Panthers, Dave Canales, specifically came out and said he's going to be firing up his starters at a full capacity this weekend. We're not sitting anybody as long as they're healthy or they're going. So I would assume that Bryce Young should have himself a pretty good week against Atlanta. Could go ahead and play upset special there. Let's see here. Steve Nato says, for defense, Philly or the Broncos? I would prefer to play the Broncos defense there, to be honest. I think there's an argument to be made in regards to playing. Well, there could be an argument to be made to playing the Philly defense, but as of right now, considering it's going to be Carson Wentz with the backups like Samaje Perine, or like, what I'm anticipating it's most likely going to be, it's going to be like Carson Steele as the running back for the Chiefs. Most likely guys like, Noah Gray will probably be out there because there's going to be no Kelsey. There's going to be no Pacheco, probably very little utilization of Kareem Hunt. I think this is going to be a game in which I wouldn't be surprised if maybe the Chiefs score a touchdown, but after that, with a full-fledged Broncos defense trying to make the playoffs against a team that, again, is sending out their second-string offense. Sure, they're still going to have a lot of their starting offensive line out there, but ultimately, I do anticipate this to be a game in which the Broncos defense would have a better time out there, defensive purposes-wise, for fantasy. Thank you. We had a question sent in via Super Chat from Christopher Farmer. It says, hey, Andrew, what are you thinking about putting together a lesson learned video for the season? We could theoretically. Ultimately, here's the reality of the situation. Any lesson that I've theoretically learned going into this year can just be attributed to a video that starts the 2025 season. As for a video for this season, I don't know if it's yeah, I don't know if it's necessary per se as of right now. I think it would be rather more impactful perhaps at the beginning of the 2025 year to kind of reflect as to what we learned from 2024 when everyone is watching in August of 2025. Because at this point, no one's really watching anymore. Everyone's pretty much done with their season. They've moved on from fantasy. As you can see, there's only 77 of us in here. So at the moment, I don't think it'll be as impactful as to potentially building an entire offseason of statistics that would imply what we learned and how we can attribute that to our upcoming 2025 draft and upcoming season. So I think that would be something in the future, but a great suggestion, Christopher. Thank you. Let's see here. We scrolled down. We had D-Rod who says, if the Ravens win, do you think Russell and the Steelers will take the game serious? Okay, well, here's the thing. NFL Week 18, what time? Okay, so the Ravens play at 1:30, and then, of course, the Bengals and Steelers. Okay, so in the event in which the Ravens were to win, the Steelers would then technically, without a doubt, be a wild card seed, okay? But they have to take the game seriously because if they were to lose, they lose out on an opportunity of playing the Texans, which is what they want to do. So as it currently stands, the Pittsburgh Steelers are the number 5 seed. They would be theoretically playing against the Houston Texans, who are the 4 seed. In the event in which they were to lose and the Chargers were to win against the if the Chargers were to beat the Las Vegas Raiders, the Chargers would leapfrog the Steelers, and they would play the Texans. So regardless of whether or not the Ravens win, etc., expect for the Steelers to play at a full capacity because they want to play against the Texans because, again, everyone wants to play against the Texans. They have been on a generational slide as to where they were at the beginning of the season, midway through, and then since the injuries to, of course, Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, obviously 2 of those being season-ending, they have slid as a team and as an offense significantly. So as of right now, yes, anticipate them to play at a full capacity regardless because they want to play the Texans. Also says, should I start Geno since he has some lovely incentives? Yeah, I mean, look, I think Geno could be argued to be a solid option within the given week because of the fact that they're taking on the Rams defense. Last time out against them, he threw for 350 and 3 touchdowns. Yes, he threw 3 interceptions, but I don't anticipate that to be, a consistent part of his scoreline. I think Geno is a solid option, but ultimately I do think that Russell Wilson is the better play of the two. All right, let's see here. Warren says, Happy New Year. Thank you very much, Warren. Says non-PPR, I need one between Daniels, Love, and Wilson. Yeah, you got to play Jaden Daniels there. Again, like I mentioned earlier this week, and I'll go ahead and reiterate, Jaden Daniels is trying to win this week, not to win their division because, again, the Eagles are slotted in as the NFC East champions, but they're primarily trying to win in order to secure a game in a matchup against the Los Angeles Rams. So as it currently stands, regardless of who wins between the Lions and the Vikings, they will be the number 5 seed. And the number 5 seed is going to take on either the Tampa Bay Buccaneers or the Atlanta Falcons. So the number 6 seed is going to be locked in to play against the Los Angeles Rams, which again, that's either going to be the Washington Commanders or the Green Bay Packers, depending on who wins in those games. If the Commanders were to win, regardless of what Green Bay does, it would allow for the Washington Commanders to play the Rams, which everyone wants to do, I would expect, rather than be the number 7 seed on the NFC side and have to play against the Eagles in the first round, which again, I'm assuming that Washington and Green Bay are both trying to avoid. Therefore, they are firing up their starters. Jaden Daniels is my suggestion there. As for your next question, I need 2 between Achane, Harris, and Irving. Irving has to be played again against New Orleans, a top-tier matchup, and he's been dominant as of late. As for Najee Harris or Devon Achane, as it currently stands, I would feel very comfortable just rolling with Harris there. I think Devon Achane's upside in the absence of Tua Tagovailoa is a little bit sketchy. Now, I will mention, earlier today, we did get an indication that there may be a possibility that Tua could play. I don't expect him to, but he was quote-unquote limited at practice today. So if, in fact, he gives it a go this weekend, that would be very much so potentially exciting for the upside of someone like Devon Achane, who certainly is going to get himself the potential of 6+ receptions within a given week anytime out with Tua Tagovailoa. So if by the time we get to Sunday, if Tua is going to be active, that would be fantastic for the case of Achane. But ultimately, in your situation, going into this weekend, I think you just have to play Harris on Saturday unless we get information prior to that claims that Tua is in fact going to play. But we'll know that by probably tomorrow based on the injury report. Otherwise, they'll probably shut him down, make him inactive so they can elevate somebody else off of the practice squad to the active roster. As for your final question, says Boswell or McLaughlin, I would suggest you play McLaughlin there. They're playing against the Saints. Last time out against the Saints, if I'm not mistaken, they went for a 50 piece. I'd assume that they're going to put up a pretty nice number this weekend against that defense. All right, let's see here. After Warren's question, Ray C says redraft PPR Tracy, Corum, Charbonnet, and Michael Carter, pick 3. If I was to play 3 of those players going into this weekend, I would play Charbonnet 1, Tracy 2, and Corum 3. That's the direction that I would go in. Charles in the chat says, good evening, Andrew. Good evening, Andrew. In an ESPN 11, what does it say? Okay, ESPN League, I'm down 11, facing Baker Mayfield, Jamar Chase, and the Ravens defense due to the Week 18. I'm starting Bryce Young, Corum, Chase Brown. If he goes, McMillan, JSN, Pittman, DJ Moore, Chigozie Okonkwo, and Gesicki. Cool. So, I mean, again, as of right now, with Bryce Young, Corum, Chase Brown, McMillan, JSN is solid. As for Pittman and DJ Moore, I think you can kind of flip a coin on that one between who's going to be the better output player. I would probably lean in the direction of most likely leaning towards Chigozie Okonkwo as that tight end. Ever so slightly, I'm thinking. But we'll know by tomorrow for sure. Says, wanted to ask for good luck and who would be a hidden gem off of the waivers. This weekend, I mean, specifically, right? The hidden gems are, again, here's the thing, guys. The hidden gems for this week are primarily going to be only existing because there are other players missing, because they are sitting. Ultimately, these are lesser players. Like having Kenneth Gainwell out there, he could end up playing a solid game against the for the Philadelphia Eagles against the Giants, because the Giants are one of the worst run stop defenses in the league. But ultimately, he's a lesser player within an offense that's most likely going to be running their third string quarterback. And I don't really see it being like the greatest week. So in terms of like hidden gems for this week, I don't know if there are very many that I feel comfortable with, because again, a lot of these players that are getting their opportunity to play are playing with second string offenses. And that's rough to predict in terms of upside. But as for your roster this week, I think you're in a pretty good spot as it currently stands with Corum, Chase Brown. Obviously pick up Khalil Herbert if you can. As for wide receivers, JSN and McMillan are the two that I'd probably roll with. Outside of that, I could justify playing Pittman there. It's just a matter of, is he going to continue to get that overall target share? I think the case for him is relatively high. If you're playing in a full PPR, I'd probably go with DJ Moore, though. Thank you. All right, let's see here. David in the chat said, trying to figure out how to approach players on teams that have nothing to play for. I have to decide between Adam Thielen, Keenan Allen, and Garrett Wilson. PPR, thanks. Yeah, look, here's the thing. Ultimately, a lot of these players, even though they have nothing to play for technically in terms of incentives or they cannot win to get into the playoffs, they're playing it for pride. And of course, they're playing to prove that they can earn another contract, right? Like Adam Thielen may not be a Carolina Panther next year. He may not, again, he's 34 years old, but he's going to probably end up somewhere else. Even if he was to re-sign with the Panthers, this weekend's contributions, his efforts, is certainly going to be taken into account based on whether or not he gets that next contract, considering his age. So if he continues to ball out, it's only going to help. As for of those three available players, look, the usage of them within their offenses is the biggest factor. So if I was going to lean towards one of these players, it would be Thielen, because of course he is the number one of his offense, while guys like Keenan Allen and Garrett Wilson are the number twos respectively. If it wasn't for the efforts of, Caleb Williams is tough to start, especially against Green Bay. And with Aaron Rodgers out there, again, like we've talked about, unless Aaron Rodgers is specifically out there without Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson's not going to get very many looks. So Thielen's probably the play there. Even with, again, no contract incentives, no playoff incentives. They're playing for pride and for a future job within the league. Dragon Slayer says, Michael Penix ranked so low. How come? Just think about the offense. When you're taking on the Carolina Panthers, what do you do to run the ball? What do you do to score? You run the ball, right? Ultimately, this entire offense is predicated on running the ball. That has been the case all season long. So when you're taking on the Panthers, even though he's going to be given opportunities to throw the ball, ultimately, Bijan Robinson is his primary kryptonite. So as long as that kryptonite exists, and when they're down in the red zone, continuing to look in the direction of Bijan Robinson, who has scored himself multiple touchdowns the last couple weeks here, it does lower his overall potential for impact. In comparison to guys like Bryce Young, on the other hand, who doesn't have a running back outside of I think they're going to have Miles Sanders out there this week. Like, it's not going to play as much of a potential upside within the given role. And additionally, again, within the matchup in itself, I do anticipate even though the Falcons defense at times has played well, I do think this could be a shootout, but if I had to guess, it probably ends up being a game in which the Atlanta Falcons take an early lead, they run out the ball, and that's what they're doing for majority of the game, while someone like Bryce Young on the other side of that game is trying to claw back from the deficit. I don't expect them to be in a negative game script, at least at this point. All right, we had a question sent in from To The Max. Says, I won my fantasy league. I just wanted to say thank you for all the time that you put in week after week. Even when you're 2 hours of sleep, brother, yeah, those were some rough streams. Let me just tell you, those are some rough ones. Thanks for the help, Andrew. Much appreciated. Thank you To The Max. Congratulations on the win. I love to hear that, my man. All right, let me see here. Let me scroll back up. Chilled Remix says, I have Lad, But if the Bengals lose, do I go Tyrone Tracy or Michael Carter? In the event in which the Bengals were to lose, you would play Tyrone Tracy this weekend. Raka says, I need 2 running backs, Ray Davis, Amir Abdullah, Garendo, Madison, Foreman, or Herbert. Okay, so pieces of information that we got earlier today regarding the running back position. Jerome Ford and Jerome Ford and Pierre Strong Jr. are both going to be out this weekend, and David Njoku for the Cleveland Browns. Therefore, Deontay Foreman is going to be the starting running back. That being said, I'm not going to play him against the Ravens because the Ravens are at a full go. They're one of the best run-stop defenses in the league. So Foreman's pretty much eliminated. Abdullah did not practice yesterday or today. Therefore, there's a possibility that he could miss this week due to his injury. If, in fact, that is the case, you would play Madison alongside of Garendo. In the event in which, that's how you would have to go about it. So if tomorrow Abdullah is designated out, you play Madison and Garendo. In the event in which Chase Brown was to miss, I could justify going Herbert with Garendo. That's the way that I go about it, Rocco. Chris Frazier says, in a half PPR, Corum, Ray Davis, or Mooney. As of right now, between the 3, I could justify playing Ray Davis there, but I do think that in the first quarter, or at least the first half of the game, we're going to see a lot of the starters of the Buffalo Bills play. Even though they shouldn't be, I think the way that this coaching staff has demonstrated it over the course of the last couple of years under Sean McDermott, they want to play their guys in week 18 regardless, just to kind of give them a little bit of a refresher, not to have too many weeks off. So with that, there will be less opportunity, in my opinion, from Ray Davis, specifically in the first half, which could impact him. So I'd go with Corum out of that group. Let's see here. We scroll down here. Let me scroll down to the very live chat here. Okay, so recent questions. What are some of the best underdog picks to make? I mean, okay, so we went over this yesterday, and I can go ahead and reiterate it as of right now. I think the best play to make this weekend, by far and away, is, I think it's, without a question, this is the best play to make. It is Mike Evans going higher than 79.5 receiving yards. Again, you guys have to remember, Mike Evans has had 10 consecutive seasons of 1,000 receiving yards. If I'm not mistaken, that is a record in terms of consecutive years of 1,000 receiving yards. I can check. Let's go check Jerry Rice in terms of what his record was in terms of consecutive years of 1,000 yards. He has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, so technically, Jerry Rice is 11. Then in that case, Mike Evans probably wants to tie him, etch his name into the, he's already a gold jacket player. So technically, he's going to need the 85 receiving yards this week in order to hit that number. Now, unfortunately, Mike Evans has a history with having himself a couple tough performances against the New Orleans Saints, but that's typically when he faces Marshawn Lattimore. Marshawn Lattimore is no longer there. So again, I think 79.5 receiving yards surpassing 80 is a guarantee this weekend for Mike Evans, as Baker Mayfield will do everything in his power in order to help him surpass that 1,000-yard mark. Now, as for other plays going into this weekend, we could talk about it in just a moment. Just want to answer a couple more of these questions that were just recently sent in. Let's see here. Caden sent in a question. Caden, let me see if I can find your question in the live chat. It says, should I start Jaylen Warren or risk waiting on the Steelers and Bengals result to start J.K. Dobbins? I also have Amir Abdullah, but he hasn't practiced all week. Got it. Yeah, look, so Amir Abdullah, considering the injury he sustained last week, there's a possibility that it's just going to be Madison at a full capacity, which again, for the purposes of fantasy, I think that would be pretty solid if he was the lone back of that backfield, considering the receiving utilization and upside that the offense has had lately. Now, in your case, am I willing to risk it? The question is, Caden, in the event where you weren't to play Jaylen Warren and you were trying to wait for Dobbins, what other options can you pick up off waivers except for Amir Abdullah? Is there somebody else that theoretically you can pivot from J.K. Dobbins to that we feel more comfortable with, or at least is closely ranked to Jaylen Warren that we can at least pivot to, or at least have that option? That's my only question. Do we have a pivoting option? Let's hear. Jacob Carr says Hawkinson or Andrews in a full PPR. My opponent has Lamar. Let me see where my tight end rankings kind of sit at right now. Again, I was working on them earlier today for tomorrow. As it currently stands, I have Mark Andrews ranked higher, so I lean in that direction as of this weekend. I know Hawkinson against his former team, the Lions, is always an exciting one. Hawkinson, obviously, a little bit of a revenge game against the Lions, not only because it's his former team, but because, last year Kirby Joseph put his helmet right into his kneecap and tore his ACL, so maybe there's something to prove there. But for right now, again, I'm just going to continue to, stack on the streak of games in which Mark Andrews continues to just score touchdowns consistently. Sweet Tooth says, what are your thoughts on Jalen McMillan? And who will you pick at tight end for week 18? Who you pick as tight end for week 18? Well, it depends what you have on on roster. Again, we're going to talk about tight ends tomorrow at a top 17, 18 capacity. We'll have the rankings as we live stream tomorrow at 6 p.m. PST. But again, if you guys aren't able to make the live stream for tomorrow afternoon, I will be here starting at noon Saturday afternoon. And of course, probably around like, it's either going to be 8:30 or 8 a.m. on Sunday. We'll talk about that later this week, depending on how many people are around in order to get those questions answered. We'll have up-to-date rankings on screen like we do every single Sunday morning. Jacob Carr says hot. Okay, so we took care of that. 26 Band says Kittle or Jonnu. It depends if Kittle's healthy. If Kittle's active this weekend, I would play Kittle. But again, he's dealing with a little bit of a hamstring. There's a possibility he could miss. Again, I'm hoping that's not going to be the case. But if in fact he plays, I would start him over Jonnu Smith. McLovin says, would you still start Bryce Young over Geno Smith, even though Smith has a contract incentive coming up? I mean, look, yes, I would. I already know that Geno Smith has potentially $5 million of incentives. Everything's been taken into account, guys. It's not like I'm missing any sort of equation piece. Now, again, if there's going to be injuries to specific players that are going to be missing that could lessen the overall upside of an additional player, you can pivot accordingly. But yeah, as of right now, I do think between the two, Bryce Young has the potential for the highest upside of the two. Yes, again, I understand. Geno Smith is going to try to empty the tank in order to go for all those statistics. Again, if you want to play Geno, I don't have an issue with it. I have them closely ranked for a reason. I expect their output to be very similar. Let's see here. Achane or Michael Carter? You have to play Achane there. I don't see myself playing Michael Carter, even in the absence of both Trey Benson and a guy like James Conner. Now, again, I don't think that Michael Carter is a bad play. I think he's very easily going to be able to score himself 10 fantasy points in a half PPR. As to the upside of that performance, I don't know if it'll be able to match something that Achane would theoretically be able to present to us. Constantino says, evening, my boy, PPR, Thielen, Amir Abdullah, Carter, Ray Davis, or Khalil Herbert, if no Brown. I'd play Thielen regardless of the entire situation. Thielen's the play for everyone there. Onage says, I need two running backs. I have Achane, JT, J.K. Dobbins, and Garendo, and Harris. Tracy, or pick up Carter. Yeah, look, if I was in your position, JT has to automatically play. We're looking to play J.K. Dobbins, so hopefully you're going to be in a situation in which, the Steelers end up losing on Saturday for the efforts of J.K. Dobbins on Sunday. If that was to take place, of course, you go JT and J.K. Dobbins. In the event in which that is not the case, you could either roll with Achane or Garendo or Tracy. Again, I'd try to wait for the J.K. Dobbins play, so I'm not going to position myself to play Harris there, per se. So if I was in your position, what is it? Is it a full PPR? I don't know what your format is. If it's a full PPR, I'd probably go like JT and potentially even Tracy. If it's like a half PPR, I could go JT Achane or JT Garendo if J.K. Dobbins wasn't to play on Sunday because the Steelers were to win. Says also Thielen over a third RB above. Yes, as long as it's a full PPR, I would play Thielen there. Kyle Lee says Michael Carter or Travis Etienne in a full PPR. Okay, so as it currently stands, based on the rankings that we presented earlier this week at the running back position, they really haven't variably changed much. Obviously, we've gotten a couple pieces of information that have moved up guys like Deontay Foreman, stuff like that. But as it currently stands, I still have Travis Etienne ranked higher. They're taking on the Colts that obviously don't know how to play defense and are very much so, like half of their feet. I'd say like the defense, maybe half their defense, maybe their full defense, depends. They're already thinking about the Cancun vacation. They're not really set up in a position to where they want to go ahead and compete at a high level. Obviously, they demonstrated that last week, giving up 45 to the worst offense in the league. D-Rod says, Freiermuth or Jonnu? I'd prefer to play Jonnu Smith this weekend. Jennings, Tracy, or Garendo? Depends if it's a full PPR. If it's a full PPR, I'm willing to roll with Jennings there. Otherwise, if it's like a half PPR, just give me Garendo at that point. Blake Corum is available. He's the best option left. Okay, that's fine. I mean, again, at that point, Caden, am I willing to risk it or do I just stick with... Based on my rankings for running back, I'm willing to take that risk. I mean, again, I do think objectively Jaylen Warren is a better play this weekend than Blake Corum. Objectively, I think that is the case. So, but... to give yourself the potential of playing Dobbins in the event in which the Steelers were to lose, I'm willing to take the risk, personally. If you don't want to take that risk and you just want to get the solid 10 points, then just play with Jaylen Warren in your lineup. All right, let's scroll down here really quickly. Steve says Mike Evans is up to 97.5 on Underdog. Oh, no, it's not. Watch. Let me show you. So when I talk about these alternatives like lines on Underdog, it's not by accident. Like, okay, so if I go to Mike Evans, theoretically. So, okay, so you see I was at 97.5. If you click on that little arrow key, it opens up alternate spreads. So you can take it as low as 69.5. You can go higher or lower on it. You could take it as high as 139, 149.5. So what I'm specifically saying is that because he needs 85 receiving yards to break the 1,000-yard mark, I think 80 as his number is the proper one to go with as of this week. So yeah, guys, there's a reason why these little arrow keys sit next to players. They're specifically there to give you alternative spreads that will potentially adjust the outplay that you will get in regards to the entry. But yeah, like you could theoretically take Lamar Jackson instead of at 1.5. You could take him at 2.5 passing touchdowns this week, which you would get a higher incentive in terms of the overall payout in that situation. We'll go ahead and put together some entries later today. But yeah, you can get it at 79.5 very easily. Let's see. Levin says, would you play Ray Davis or J.K. Dobbins? I'd rather play J.K. Dobbins. But again, understand that if in fact the Steelers win on Saturday, J.K. Dobbins' value plummets mightily, because at that point, the Chargers, whether they win or lose, are going to 100% be stuck in their position. Within their, well, yes, because they've already beaten the Broncos twice. So yes, regardless, if the Steelers win, expect for J.K. Dobbins to only play the first half. He only needs 58 rushing yards to hit his incentive for 900 rushing yards on the season, and then he's getting pulled. Let's hear Kyle Lee says, I don't feel like Mac Jones is getting enough love considering his last 3 games against okay defenses. The Colts are bottom 10. Yeah, look, here's the thing about Mac Jones. There's so much sketchiness with playing him. You're not wrong, though. You're not wrong at all. He's played relatively well with the current circumstance that he is in for fantasy purposes, but I don't know if I can ever trust him. If you want to play him, you can. That's on you. I don't feel comfortable enough even suggesting him. Adventure says Charbonnet, Chase Brown, J.K. Dobbins, Warren, Herbert are my running backs in a full PPR. Do I play 3 or just 2 of them? I mean, at this point, if I was in your position, Charbonnet and Chase Brown should be like the priority plays as of this upcoming Saturday. So you'd have Chase Brown in for sure if he was active. In the event in which he is not active, at that point, you'd probably roll with... At that point, you'd probably roll with Herbert. And then in the event in which the Steelers won, you play Charbonnet on Sunday. Otherwise, you play J.K. Dobbins on Sunday. And then you could theoretically have Charbonnet as your number 3 within that overall situation. So, again, there's a lot of potential for flexibility here in your position, primarily because, again, yeah, there's the unknown as to whether or not the Cincinnati Bengals or Pittsburgh Steelers are winning this upcoming Saturday, which again, I think kind of determines who you end up starting within the given weekend. So for right now, Chase Brown or Brown, Chase Brown or Herbert have to play, whichever one of the two ends up being the primary number 1, depending on Chase Brown's status. And then at that point, on Sunday, you're either playing Charbonnet Dobbins as that 2-3, or you're just playing Charbonnet by himself. Jonnu or Kittle? If Kittle's active this weekend, I'm playing him. Ashley Gomez says, I took 3rd. Damn, that's tough. That is tough. Let's see here. McMillan says, sorry, not McMillan. Sweet Tooth says McMillan or JSN at wide receiver 2. I'd rather have JSN there. And why not McMillan? I mean, I expect JSN against a defense like the Los Angeles Rams. Last time out against them, he completely torched the defense. Went for 38 fantasy points and a half PPR. I'd assume very similar. I mean, he's not going to go for 38, but I assume a lot of potential upside in terms of double-digit target opportunity. He'd probably double up the target opportunity that Jalen McMillan will be exposed to. And on top of that, obviously, he's going to have himself just as much receiving yard upside, if not more reception upside, and can very easily find himself in the end zone with a couple touchdowns there, considering he scored 2 against the Rams last time out. So I'd expect for Geno to look in his direction in order to hit those incentives when he's trying to. Let's see here. Bernea says, I'm in 2 championships. Thanks, Andrew. And congratulations. Let's hopefully we can bring them in and finish the job, shall we? Jem Hunter says, I have to start 2 between Tyrone Tracy, Garendo, and Thielen in a full PPR. Okay, if it's a full PPR, at that point, I'd probably go with Tyrone Tracy and Thielen. If it's a full PPR. Otherwise, if it's a half, I could consider going like Thielen and Garendo or even both running backs. But Garendo will probably play in a half. But Tracy and Thielen seem pretty safe in my mind. Says also Commanders or Eagles or Jets. As for defense, I would probably go with the Commanders. Again, earlier today when Mike McCarthy said that they weren't 100% certain as to how much Cooper Rush was going to play, kind of implying that there's going to be a lot of Trey Lance this upcoming weekend. I think that implies that there's going to be a lot of potential for upside in regards to Trey Lance in the second half, which inherently just makes the Washington defense more valuable because of the turnover potential. Panda says it's rough. It's a rough week 18. Quarterback Geno Smith, Huntley, or Bryce Young. I mean, again, Huntley could be in these top 17 rankings, assuming we had 100% confirmation that Tua Tagovailoa was out. I wouldn't, again, because Tua practiced it earlier today at a limited capacity, I was like, I don't know if I want to really throw him into the mix here. So I don't feel 100% confident on Tua's status yet. If in the event he was out, I think Huntley could be a solid play at a top 16 option, probably even ahead of Dobbs in this scenario. But it's either Bryce Young or Geno between those two. I feel relatively comfortable rolling in the direction of Bryce Young there. If you wanted to play Geno because he's chasing those incentives, then go for it. I mean, again, you got to remember, even though technically Bryce Young doesn't have anything to play for in terms of incentive-wise, his incentive is keeping his job as the starting quarterback of the Carolina Panthers. That is really his incentive. Every game he goes out there, he is playing in order to make sure that he's not replaced. That's really what it is at this point. So I'd expect him to ball out against that Atlanta defense. Tanner says top defenses for week 18. I have the Chargers, but I'm worried they may not start their starters. I mean, look, they can only inactivate 7 players ultimately going into this weekend. So it's not like because. So in the event, for example, just throwing it out there, let's say, for example, the Pittsburgh Steelers win on Saturday. It's not like every single defensive starter is going to be on the bench. They can't. It's only a 53-man roster. So you can't just go out there and only play 25 guys. A lot of players are going to have to go this weekend regardless. So their starting defense is going to be out there. If you were going to look to an alternative defense, again, we talked about it earlier this week in terms of the waiver wire episode. Let me just go ahead and pull that up in terms of my list of defenses that I suggested. If somehow, some way, the following defenses are available, pick them up. A couple that are in mind, obviously Baltimore, Denver, the Los Angeles Chargers, Green Bay Packers, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and or Washington Commanders. So in your case, obviously, if you were trying to avoid playing the Los Angeles Chargers, if they were to lose to Pittsburgh, I think an alternative option, again, Green Bay, Tampa Bay, Washington, if they're available, pick them up, play them. Otherwise, you'd have to name a couple that are available in your league for me to kind of suggest. Let's see here. Okay, we took care of that. Constantino says PPR, Garendo, Tracy, Carter, or Ray Davis. I don't really want to play Ray Davis there. Of the available, I'd probably go Tracy, number 1, Garendo, 2, Carter, 3, Ray Davis, 4. Also, are we trusting Pollard for the incentives? Yes. Again, Pollard has been limited the last 2 days. We already know from the beginning of the week, the head coach of the Tennessee Titans specifically came out and said that Tyjae Spears was not playing because of the concussion protocol. Again, that is I think the 3rd concussion that he's sustained this season. Is a pretty ridiculous situation. So he's not going to play. It's going to be Tony Pollard at a full capacity against Houston, who may end up probably pulling their primary starters as an offense, Mixon, Nico Collins, Schultz, and Stroud by halftime. So it could give a lot of opportunity for the offense of the Tennessee Titans to pull away in the second half there. Andrew Montero says, do you think the Steelers-Bengals game goes over 55 and the Lions-Vikings goes over 63? Okay, so I'll tell you first and foremost, I don't play lines like that because technically it's not legal in California. So I don't have any opportunity to ever play over-unders in terms of points scored in games. So I would say I don't really have much experience on the matter. Now, as if you're asking me my straight opinion, I'd say yes, there's a very high likelihood that both those games go over. Mainly because the Detroit secondary, they got dog-walked in that first half. I mean, the first 3 quarters, they got dog-walked by the 49ers offense, okay? And that's a 49ers offense without an offensive line, without Brandon Ayuk, and without Christian McCaffrey. So take that as you will. Now, as for the other game, I mean, the Bengals defense has been relatively solid as of late, but I still think those teams are going to be scoring at a pretty high clip. Yeah, I would say that both those games probably go over. But again, take it as a at a grain of salt, because ultimately I don't really play lines like that, so I'm not really familiar with how often these teams are able to surpass those numbers because I really just don't look at those kind of statistics in terms of head-to-heads. I just use the Vegas totals as like a implication as to what the game could theoretically look like in terms of the variables that we're taking into account when ranking players based on their potential for upside in a circumstance like that. Because if there's an implied for a 63-point total, right? The potential of each team theoretically scoring, let's say it's a 63-point total, and let's say the Lions are a -2 favorite, right? They would be implying that the game is like a 30 to 33 kind of game in that situation, to where potentially if there's 30 points scored on the board, that's like 4 touchdowns for each team. That could potentially mean 2 passing touchdowns for Jared Goff, and potentially even more. So it kind of gives us a little bit more of an outline as to what it could potentially look like. Obviously, sometimes it doesn't hit, sometimes the under hits, etc. But anyway, scrolling down, what do we have here? We took care of Panda. It says, we took care of that. Green screen, what's up? It says PPR start to Achane, Dobbins, Corum, Michael Carter, Abdullah. So considering we don't know the Abdullah kind of situation, he may not play this weekend. As of right now, if I was in your position, I'd be looking to try to play Achane and Dobbins. In the event in which Abdullah is inactive this weekend, obviously you can pivot to Madison if he's available, but Dobbins and Achane are probably the guys. In the event in which the Pittsburgh Steelers win on Saturday, you can't play Dobbins there. You'd probably just go with Achane and Michael Carter at that point. If Abdullah's healthy, then you can go with Achane and Abdullah. Start 2 wide receivers, Thielen, McMillan, Zaki. Okay, yeah. As of those 3, I just go with Thielen and McMillan as of right now. Flex, wide receiver. Actually, no, one flex has remaining choices. Bucs defense or Broncos defense. I'd still lean with the Broncos defense there. I think the Bucs defense is probably just as good, if not. I mean, yeah, I think there could be an argument in which the Bucs defense could be better, but I'd play the Broncos there. If I was going to lean in the direction of a flex play here, I'd probably just tell you to play all 3 receivers. So, like Achane, Dobbins, assuming everything goes according to plan, along with Thielen, McMillan, and Zacchaeus. Tristan in the chat says, I flex Charbonnet, Carter, Malik, Addison, JMO, Kamara, or Sutton. I don't expect Kamara to play. Again, this is the final game. He's been out for quite a while with that groin injury. Carter, I don't like. Malik Neighbors is a solid option, especially in a full PPR. Addison's a great option. So is JMO. So is Sutton. I mean, ultimately, so is Charbonnet. Really, it depends on what your scoring format is, Tristan. If you're playing in a full PPR, I'd probably just go with Malik Neighbors there. If you're playing in like a standard league, perhaps we can just go for touchdown upside in the case of Jordan Addison there or Jameson Williams. If we're talking about a half PPR, I think I'm pretty comfortable with the idea of also still going with Neighbors there. But again, it does present its potential for risk. What was your second question there? Let me scroll down a little bit. Where did it go? Said at tight end, do I play TJ Hawkinson, Jonnu Smith, Chigoziem Okonkwo, or Ertz? I play Jonnu Smith there. Kevin says, should I play Abdullah, Carter, or Tracy at running back? As of right now, regardless of Abdullah's status, I probably end up just playing Tracy there. In the event in which the Steelers were to beat if the Steelers were able to beat the Bengals on Saturday and the Chargers will be at a lesser potential for starting their guys in the second half, there may be a conversation to play Abdullah there because of the second half upside. But as of right now, it would be Tracy, considering I don't know Abdullah's status. Warren says Vikings or the Chiefs defense. Neither, ultimately. If I had to play one, I'd play the Vikings, though. I'm not playing the Chiefs defense. No, thank you. Mayfield or Daniels. Again, the rankings on screen is the direction I'm going in, so I'd play Jaden Daniels there. If you want to play Mayfield, that's got to be on your own decision-making. Do you trust Pickens? I mean, I trust that the matchup should be a higher scoring event. As to whether he scores that touchdown, that's purely the only difference maker as to whether or not he'll be a top 15 option or a kind of low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3. Because of the lack of opportunity he gets, the lack of receptions, therefore the lack of yardage, unfortunately, he is 100% contingent on a touchdown to get him into that top-tier conversation. He needs that 6-point influx. Without it, I think it definitely does impact him negatively. Obviously, they've been off the last couple of days. Last time out against the Chiefs wasn't the greatest overall showing because, again, he was only just coming off of the hamstring injury. So hopefully the time off has been beneficial to his health and could provide an upside performance this weekend. I think he's a solid wide receiver too, though. Alrighty, let's see here. We scroll down. Maurice McDonald says, can you help me, Andrew, on my question? Yeah, where's your question? It says, hey, Andrew. It says, I'm hold on first place by 50 points. Okay, so you're in the lead by 50 points. I need a running back. I need 2 between Gibbs, Gainwell, Herbert, and Ryan Robinson. Cool, yeah. Look, if I was in your situation here, in the event in which Chase Brown was inactive on Saturday, and Herbert was going to be the clear and away starter for the offense, I'd play Herbert with Gibbs. In the event in which Chase Brown plays, you play Gibbs with Brian Robinson there. Thank you. There could even be a conversation in which you just play Gibbs and Brian Robinson just to avoid any risk with Herbert. But I don't mind the idea of playing Herbert in that scenario, ultimately. Because, again, Brian Robinson, as of late, really the running game hasn't been very potent for the offense. And when we have guys like with Chris Rodriguez Jr. stealing potential touchdowns and guys like Jeremy McNichols getting himself utilization, it doesn't make me feel too confident on it. So, again, if it's Herbert by himself, I play him with Gibbs. Otherwise, if it's Chase Brown is playing, I'd go Gibbs and Brian Robinson. All right, let's scroll down here a little bit. What do we have here? Ron is answering other people's questions. Sounds good. Adventure says Smith or Ertz. As of right now, I'd probably just play Smith for right now. D-Rod79 says Jennings or Tracy, full PPR. I'd probably still play Jennings there. If Debo's going to be out, I think it makes it 100% a guarantee on that fact. But for right now, I don't mind playing Jennings. Angel says, brother, would you be down to do to keep doing underdog videos throughout the off season? Would love to follow the picks. Yeah, I mean, I could potentially post them in regards to like post it on YouTube as like a video. I probably won't live stream in those circumstances because again, it'll be like on a Saturday prior to a wild card weekend game. But I could potentially post a couple things like for the first weekend of wild card games. I will post a video that includes underdog picks for that upcoming weekend. So that will be available for you, Angel. Flex Jennings or Tracy. Yeah, we took care of that one. 26 bands up says I need a running back. Mixon won't play or have. Okay, yeah. So again, I don't expect Mixon to play past the first half. Now, it's not to say that Mixon can't score 15 points in the first half. He can certainly have a drive in which he goes off or goes for a 7-yard touchdown. It's always within the realm of possibility. But under the assumption that he's going to get limited utilization, I would probably just play Carter out of the available options you have there, especially if it's a full PPR. God's Honest Truth says Dowdle or Tracy. I'd go with Dowdle there this weekend. Bruce J. Wilson says Ray Davis or Ty Johnson. I prefer to play Ray Davis there. Or roll with both of them and sit Kamani Vidal. Kamani Vidal playing is purely 100% contingent on whether or not the Steelers win. So if I was in your position, I would just expect to play both of those Bills running backs. Thank you. Okay. Let's see here. The next question comes in from Kevin, who says McMillan, Carter, or Abdullah. I just lean towards playing McMillan there. Yeah, McMillan has just been too consistent as late for me not to go with a hot hand. That's really just the mentality at this point. It's just a hot hand approach. So somebody earlier was asking, like, hey, Andrew, what are a couple of the underdog plays that we prefer going into this weekend? So we talked about it, right? Mike Evans going higher than 79.5 receiving yards. That's my favorite play of the weekend, primarily because, again, he needs 85 receiving yards to pass 100. 1,000 total receiving yards on the season. So again, very much so enticing of a play. Now, another player that, again, we've talked about today in regards to them hitting their incentives is Geno Smith, right? I think Geno Smith being able to light it up with guys like JSN and DK Metcalf is certainly within the realm of possibility. If we talk about specifically, Jackson Smith and Jigba, let's see here. I mean, obviously, going up against the Rams team that doesn't have an offense out there fielding, mainly because, again, they're sitting Stafford, Kyron, Puka, and Kupp. It's going to just lead to more opportunities for the Seattle Seahawks to score. Obviously, this most recent performance in that rain game against the Chicago Bears, Jackson Smith came away with 3 receptions. But prior to that, 8, 10, 5, 4, 6, 10, 7, 6. Again, last time out against the Los Angeles Rams, 7 catches for 180 and 2 touchdowns. I think the idea of him surpassing 4.5 receptions is such a free play. Like, I would just take him at 5 catches. I think that's very much so within the realm of possibility as Geno is trying to hit his overall kind of incentives, whether it is passing yardage, touchdowns, etc. Another play that theoretically we could go with going into this weekend, we could try to run after and like try to tail the potential of incentives. Like if Tony Pollard starts to get numbers going in his direction, because as it currently stands, they don't have really anything attached to him because they don't know whether he's going to play. We'll keep an eye on that as the week progresses. But again, we could theoretically go after some of the incentive-based performances. Like Kyler Murray, again, needs 50 rushing yards to hit his incentive of 150K. That's always within the realm of possibility of potentially occurring. But outside of that, I'm still waiting on some of these numbers to come through. Like, look, like BTJ not having a reception count bothers me. Like, I'm waiting on this. I'm still waiting for an anytime touchdown for Jonathan Taylor because I'm willing to take that. Again, we'll get closer to the Sunday and it'll probably pop up. Like, I need more than just receiving yards to make bright. I want receptions here. I want it. It'll probably be like at 5.5, but I'll still take it at that point. Also, Malik Neighbors. Again, we could probably throw him into the mix at his lowest receiving reception total. So at 4.5, because again, if I'm not mistaken, Malik Neighbors only needs 5 receptions to break the rookie season record that Puka Nacua broke last season. Let me check this out. Malik Neighbors. So in terms of receptions that he has this season, so he has a total of 104. Let's see, Puka Nacua last season, He broke the record for rookies with 105 receptions. So really, he just needs a couple receptions here and he breaks the record. He's good to go. So I feel like Neighbors in the mix there, obviously trying to maybe catch up to, Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers is another player that we could technically attach to in terms of these final game incentives, in terms of Brock Bowers trying to go after the record for most receptions by a tight end in NFL history. What is his number at? I mean, again, we probably pivot to like something like that. Again, the multipliers are so low in the case of these numbers, 0.69, 0.65, 0.67. They just become a sketchy mess. I probably just roll with these three for now. Again, we've put these players into entries in the last couple of days for sure. I'm more than happy to go ahead and do it again. But yeah, these are just a couple of the plays that I keep in mind in terms of going into this weekend. I think are automatics. Okay, a couple more questions, then we're going to close out today's live stream. I appreciate y'all coming through, supporting the channel. A couple more here, and we'll end it out. Kevin, we took care of that. Bears fan says, I'm down 22 in my fantasy championship. I'm looking for high upside. Who are my 5 starters? Achane, Tracy, Evans, McLaurin, Dobbins, Carter, Mooney, or Olave? Yeah, I'm not really interested in playing Olave, even if he goes. Also, Bucks or Commanders defense. At that one's tough. I think I just played the Bucks defense there. I think in the same vein, I'd probably end up going with like Evans has to play, McLaurin has to play, Dobbins has to play. And then at that point, it's probably Tracy and Achane. Those are your 5. In the event in which the Steelers win and Dobbins is going to be a lesser option, you can pivot from Dobbins to probably playing Carter at that point. That's what I'm thinking for right now. Panda Gaming says Ray Davis, Michael Carter, or Gibson. Antonio Gibson should be the primary starter there. So I don't mind the idea of going either Gibson or Michael Carter. I'd lean in the direction of probably assuming Gibson is going to get himself very similar kind of shares of opportunity that he did last week, considering, again, they've kind of pivoted away from Ramondre, unfortunately, because of the fumble struggles. Lou says start 1 in the flex PPR. What does it say? Running back Brown, if active, Herbert, if Brown is inactive, Hill or Carter. Okay, if Chase Brown was active, I'd play him. In the event in which he is not, I'm playing Tyreek Hill there, regardless of whether or not it is Tua or the backup quarterback. No problem, guys. Honest truth. What does it say? It says, thanks for answering my question. Just one more, please. Warren or Harris? I prefer to play Najee Harris this weekend. Ron the Don says, to get more of a multiplier, I advise you take higher or lower on Mike Evans' fantasy points on any platform. What is his fantasy point total at? Let me see here. Evans. Yeah, they don't really have a fantasy point total as of right now implicated, so we'll have to wait on that. Pollard or Jones in a full PPR. In the event in which Tony Pollard was active this weekend, am I playing him over Aaron Jones? That is the question. Oop, that's not what I wanted to do. Let's see here. Where do I have Tony Pollard currently ranked? Let's see. Week 18. Tony Pollard is there. Aaron Jones is ahead of him. So yeah, even if Pollard is active, I'm just going to play Aaron Jones within the upcoming matchup. Thank you. Let's hear. Obi-Wan Kenobi says, here to support my guy. Thank you very much, Obi. Caleb with the final question of the night says, Andrew, I've looked up to you for a while. One of the main reasons I joined fantasy content space. Thanks for all that you do. Thank you, Caleb. I appreciate that, brother. Let's see here. Let's go to your channel, Caleb. What do you got here, brother? Nice. You've been making content. 4.2K. Let's go. There you go. Hey, baby. Let's go. That's fantastic. Just keep it up, brother. Again, consistency is all. That's it. Just keep grinding, brother. That's all it is. I'm telling you. Just be consistent with it. Like I've done over the last couple seasons, just try to post content every day over the course of the year. Obviously, others would probably suggest that you post on like social media accounts, all that kind of jazz. I don't even get into that kind of stuff. I've just purely based it off of content on YouTube. I haven't really expanded into those kind of realms, but yeah, I would say that's probably short form content. Probably if you have the time and the effort to go after that, go after that. Otherwise, consistency on YouTube in terms of being there every week, and obviously, keep it rolling. You'll be good to go, Caleb. Congrats. That's again, 4.2K. Even though you may think it's not a lot, it's a fucking lot, dude. I'm telling you, it is. That's a big deal on YouTube. I'm telling you, because it only takes a couple pieces of information, couple videos here and there to hit the algorithm, brother, and it goes. Let's hear. Ethan Lewis says, I have to pick 2 running backs, man. I'm stressing. Okay, very well. It says, do I go with Breece Hall, Achane, Michael Carter, Ray Davis, Corum, or Tracy? Listen, of the available that you have here, I'm not in love with any of these players. But if I was to suggest two of them, it probably ends up being like an Achane Tracy combo there. I could theoretically advise the idea of going after Breece Hall. I don't love it though. Let's see here. Javar says, also, do you think Washington is letting Daniels play all 4 quarters mainly because of the playoff clinching? I would assume that they're going to allow Daniels to play until they are in a stable enough lead. The question is, what is a stable lead? I would assume that's 3 touchdowns, so 21-point advantage. Once they get to a point to where they're up 21 to 28 points, potentially 24, depending on a field goal, I think at that point they'd pull him. So if we're going to assume that they're going to, sustain a pretty massive lead against the Cowboys defense, it would be done in the effort of Jaden Daniels getting a solid enough fantasy point total with those efforts. Just in the same way in which, again, we've talked about other quarterbacks playing against like pretty underwhelming teams. For example, a couple weeks back, we had Lamar Jackson in week 15 against the New York Giants. We were worried that there's a potential in which, again, they're going to blow out the Giants so badly that he doesn't score any fantasy points and maybe he gets pulled in the second half. The fact of the matter was all the points went in his direction as he threw 5 passing touchdowns, right? Lutz, Dicker, or Reichard. As of right now, I'm probably leaning towards Reichard. They're indoors, not really worried about weather in that circumstance. D-Rod says Zacchaeus. We have Jennings or Mims. I just go with Jennings there in a full PPR. I'll ask about wide receivers tomorrow, Andrew. I mean, again, I had wide receivers ranked yesterday. So again, just so I can show you, for those of you who are here watching the channel, I did live stream yesterday and the day before and the day before. Again, we're trying to live stream every single day with the potential of just trying to give you guys these rankings. We can talk about wide receivers tomorrow at a greater capacity if you'd like. But otherwise, in terms of wide receiver rankings, like you can see on screen, we had it posted yesterday on the channel. So again, if you travel to the live stream conversation, again, these are the rankings from yesterday. You can see me over there talking about it yesterday, all that kind of jazz. So if you want to check that out, you can. I appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, let's see here. A couple more questions, I suppose, coming in here. Dear God, help us. What a name, huh? Says I have Allen, so Wilson or Geno? Yes. I'd probably just play Russell Wilson there if I was in your position. You could certainly play Geno if you feel like he's going to go for the Omega upside performance, which certainly is in the realm of possibility. But I like Wilson there. Thank you. All right, guys. I appreciate y'all. That'll be where I'll call it. We've been here for about an hour, which is pretty much perfect timing. Again, I'll be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. once again, PST, talking about tight end rankings for this week. Also, I'll be here Saturday afternoon, noon, PST. So an hour and a half before the Baltimore Ravens take on the Cleveland Browns. We'll have rankings on screen. We'll answer questions. If you guys have any, swing on by. And then we'll also be here Sunday morning so that whatever happened on Saturday, we'll have that all the implications that revolve around those outcomes implied within the Sunday morning rankings, where I'll probably be live either at 8 or 8:30 a.m. PST. I appreciate y'all. Have a great rest of your Thursday night. Much love. I'm queuing the double helix, the one and only. And until next time, have a great night. I'll see you guys. Peace.